is Marvin L. Storm. Today we're here with Joe Guarino. Joe, would you take a few minutes and introduce yourself? And we're going to chat a little bit more about your background and kind of more about your business and your specialty.
Sure. Thank you, Marvin. So I oversee the United States market for Link Business, and I also own the Link Business office in Pennsylvania. And at Link, we have really two divisions. We have our Link Business division, which is a kind of traditional business brokerage, and our Link Enterprise division, which is our lower middle market operation.
And you said you have an office or own the office in the Pennsylvania area. What specific city or part of the Pennsylvania do you live in and have your
Sure,
office?
we're based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in south central Pennsylvania.
All right. And where are the other offices to Link
Yeah,
Business?
Sure, we currently have two offices in Texas, one in Dallas, one in Fort Worth. We have one in New York City. We have one in the Silicon Valley. My gosh, and plus my office in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, that gives you coverage from one side of the country to the other.
Yeah, it does. You know, in our enterprise division, those deals are really national, so it doesn't necessarily matter where you are. But that being said, we are in the process of expanding and opening new offices.
Oh, that's cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your background, and kind of what your career path was and what you did before kind of this M&A career that you now find yourself in, and facilitating, transactions and helping entrepreneurs exit their business. Talk a little bit about what that career path was like for you.
Sure. Well, I started my career with a large company, kind of came up through sales and marketing into general management. Got my first kind of exposure to strategy and M&A there. And then one day realized that big company life didn't really suit me. So I left to go to work in what I would call, I consider myself kind of a second generation business manager. I'm not sure I'm the entrepreneur, but I'm sometimes the person to take over from the entrepreneur to drive the more rapid growth, take the business forward. Please, that's no insult to entrepreneurs. I could never do what they do, but sometimes it's that next person. So I ended up running 4 different businesses with private equity in that type of a role, where the goal is to come in, build a strategic plan, make acquisitions along the way, and ultimately exit those businesses. And that's a challenging world, but an exciting world to be in. And after a number of years of doing that, I decided that I really wanted to pick and choose the things that I enjoyed the most about all of my career, and do those every day. And I decided that was really kind of strategic planning for growth and business transactions. So in my determining how I wanted to go about doing that, I saw a really attractive model where we could have a business brokerage, have a lowest middle market practice. It doesn't compete with investment bankers, but rather is in that space kind of between business brokerage and investment banking. We can bring a lot of professionalism to that, and also do exit planning and preparation consulting. So that's really the Link, the business model that I built with Link. And then subsequently, we launched the enterprise division, and I've now taken over the United States market. So, and we're looking to grow. We think we have a very differentiated business model.
All right, so when we're looking at your career path and the things you've done, it sounds like you spent most of your career in this lower middle market business. And so just for our audience, as benefit here, business brokerage and M&A and investment banking, they all have their, kind of market niches. Would you just take a few minutes and talk about those different stratifications of the brokerage business M&A field, starting with Main Street up to investment banking?
Sure.
Just a 1-minute tutorial for our audience here.
Sure, absolutely. As a general statement, we would consider, a Main Street business something that is, let's say, under $2 million in value. And And that can include, restaurants and retail businesses and a variety of different kinds of businesses. What we see as this, I call lower middle market or lowest middle market, is really that, $2 to $25 million space where most investment bankers won't play in that area, but there's a lot of businesses in that size, and they need both help with selling, they need help with buying, and they need help with preparation. So that's how we define those different spaces. Some of the different characteristics, sometimes there are strategic buyers for Main Street businesses, but they're often individual buyers. Once you get into where our enterprise division plays or into investment banking, all three buyer types, as I refer to them, become very relevant. Financial buyers like private equity or investment buyers, strategic buyers, and individual buyers, all are relevant in those spaces. It's also critical, in that, lower middle market, that the people that are working on deals have real life deal experience. You don't learn that kind of stuff by sitting in a classroom or by going through training. You learn it by actually being involved in larger transactions. So we're always careful that our team has that type of experience.
Well, thanks for sharing those insights. Tell me, from your perspective, what are some of the personal characteristics and individual strengths that have contributed to kind of your success in this M&A space or industry?
That's really a great question. It's one thing to talk about, financial acumen and all that, but I will tell you, it's about people skills. The ability to communicate with people, both explaining to them how we can help them, helping manage them through the process. One of the advantages that I have is that I went through all this as a CEO many times. So I know what emotions you go through. I know how it feels to go through it, and it's easy to empathize with people. And then the third piece of that is just, being a deal maker, right? Bringing parties together, helping bridge disagreements, right? Helping get everybody on the same page. I think it's the interpersonal skills to do those things that, I think are most important.
So when you look over your career as an M&A advisor, what would you consider one of your greatest accomplishments?
Yeah, honestly, at this stage of my career, we talk about desired outcomes for our clients, and we've had several outcomes where things were looking very dire for our clients, and we ended up not just bailing them out, but getting them windfalls that they deserve. They had just gone through some tough times, and when you're celebrating a transaction with people and there's tears in the eyes and they're thanking you for the outcome and for saving their houses and all those kinds of things, there's not much that's more gratifying.
It's got to be really gratifying, I tell you, to have that type of impact. So tell me a little bit about some of the situations where you've had some challenges and made some wrong turns where you should have made the right turn. You went left instead of right. Tell me a little bit about some of your bigger mistakes.
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things I think that people have to understand is there are things that are quote unquote sacred within businesses that you might never think are important. And, I made this mistake, as a CEO of private equity run companies where something that seems so trivial is really important to the organization. And something that seems really important isn't as important. So really being able to go in and understand what makes that business tick, making sure we understand all the different key aspects of things, making sure things are documented and so forth, so that buyers can gain as good an understanding as possible. I learned that the hard way, numerous times by, making wrong turns, devaluing certain things and overvaluing other things.
Well, that's good insight, and I think that is through those experiences that we learn. And the important thing, I guess, is that we really learned them. When you look back at the deals and transactions that you have been involved in, what are three of the most important characteristics that you think an investment, banker or M&A advisor really needs to have to facilitate and do good for their client?
Skill sets, are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, number one is communication. We always have weekly or biweekly discussions with our clients, and sometimes they're not easy because the things that we're hoping are happening aren't necessarily happening, or things are hitting a bad spot. But we have to always have that open trust and dialogue with our clients along the way. I know a lot of people in our industry don't necessarily do that, and it causes frustration. I mentioned, also just the perspective, I'll call it deal maker skills, perspective to sit back and say, okay, this deal structure is here. What's fair this way? What's fair that way? What isn't? And be able to have the people skills to move things in the direction they need to move is another one. And perhaps the third one is a detail orientation, right? Numbers are numbers and facts are facts, and we have to do a fantastic job of interpreting all the data, presenting the data incredibly well, and telling the story incredibly well. So, being detail oriented and it's a form of communication as well, to be able to tell a story and an offering memorandum that that will help the buyer understand why the business is special.
As you look at the M&A industry today as an advisor, what changes and trends do you see on the horizon that may have an impact on the M&A industry and business in general?
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of advisors, whether it's M&A advisors or it's professionals like accountants and attorneys, that'll be retiring over time. So I think more contemporary methodologies and approaches will continue to become routine. We, for example, market ourselves and market businesses a little differently and a little more maybe contemporarily than some others do.
Why don't you elaborate on that when you say contemporarily marketing?
Yeah. We're not afraid to use online tools. We're not afraid to come out and talk about exactly what we do. The old way was there's just a mystique about this firm, and it's kind of secretive who we work with, and we obviously protect the confidentiality of our clients, but we recognize that buyers and sellers are looking in different places from where they looked 10 years ago to determine who they're going to work with and determine the businesses that they're going to buy. So we have this. We're also, I think that we're a lean operation. We have transaction buyers and we have support resources, but we're able to, offer different types of fee structures that might be, advantageous in some ways, not less necessarily, but just different. That can be more of a collaboration between the client, and the advisor. So we're always looking at, where things are going and how we can do things, in a little bit different way.
So if you had to look back on your 30-year-old self with the experience that you've had over the decades you've been in business on the corporate side and the private equity side, now on the advisor side and M&A, what would you tell your 30-year-old self today if you could? Yeah,
that's a great question. For many years, I worked extremely hard and not that I don't now. But if you have a passion for your career, it's okay to work extremely hard, but don't ever lose your perspective, right? Family, it's very easy to get caught up in the game, get caught up in financial things. Don't ever lose sight of the things that are most important in life, because I think at one point I almost did, and I feel like I've now gained, the right perspective, on business and on life.
Well, I have to tell you, being of a generation or two down from, the decades that I've been doing this, as you have, perspective is a big deal. It changes everything if you have the right perspective on life, your career, the business that you operate and manage. Perspective is a big deal. So I have great empathy, and I think you're spot on. If we could do some things again and have a little bit different perspective in our life. One final question as we wrap up here today, Joe. Would you have done anything differently during COVID, that we're kind of on the back end of this pandemic in your own business? Would you have done anything differently now with the benefit of hindsight?
Actually, I would not have. We stayed pretty busy during COVID, and we pressed forward, and we were courageous about being there for our clients. And the other thing we did, honestly, was, we were listening to all kinds of, information about valuations and what effect is COVID going to have on valuations. And I'm happiest that we didn't decide that, there's just a marketplace valuation drop because of COVID. Because as we look now at our clients and some prospective clients, the pace at which they've, gotten back to normal was incredibly quick. And it would have been really easy to say, well, darn it, your business was down 30% last year because of a pandemic. You should take a haircut. Now looking at it in the rearview mirror, it's a blip on the radar screen for a lot of businesses. I'm not saying it's not an ongoing challenge for some, but for many businesses, it truly, I think, will be viewed as a blip on the radar screen.
Yeah, I think that's been certainly true with a lot of businesses. And this word perspective comes to mind again, is that when you stand back and take a look at the global, life or the extended period of life of a business, COVID is, can be a blip and sometimes an uptick. And you have to have that perspective and not panic like a lot of folks did, I think, during COVID. It certainly motivated people to think outside of the box and to rethink their business model in many cases. So I appreciate your input and comments. And again, if someone wanted to reach out and chat with you and chat a little bit more about your company and their specific situation, how would they reach out and do that for you?
Sure. Our number here at the office is 717-740-5496, or they can reach us at info@linkbusiness.com.
All right, great. Thanks for being with us here today, Joe, and we'll look forward to seeing everyone on our next episode where we chat more about...
Thanks for listening to the Business Exit Stories podcast. For more information or to reach out to today's guest, visit www.businessexitstories.com for more details. Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast from your favorite podcasting platforms. And remember, maximizing business value at the time of exit doesn't happen magically. It takes planning.